Welcome everyone to the Redesigning School Counseling Renewal webinar. In this webinar, we will be looking at priority goals and doing the priority goals update. My name is Sue Reynolds. I'm the Executive Director of the American Student Achievement Institute in Bloomington, Indiana, and we'll be looking today again at the priority goals. So today's agenda is to begin like we always do with a quick review of the RSC beliefs and the RSC process. We like to do that at the beginning of each of our webinars just to put things into perspective. And then this month we will specifically be looking at resources and expanding resources, and then also at the priority goals. Let's see here. We'll also be looking at the submissions that you'll be turning in and the rubrics for those submissions, and then we'll go to the online system. So we'll begin with a review. Looking at the RSC beliefs. Again, we believe that school counseling programs help students make sound choices in areas that impact academic success. So it's all about helping kids be successful at school. This is our school counseling pyramid, and the idea is that when students are involved in sound guidance and counseling programs, they make better choices, and as a result of making better choices, student achievement goes up. So when we're designing the school counseling program, we're just going to work that pyramid backwards. We're going to start out with what's the achievement that we want kids to reach? What are the achievement levels that we want kids to reach? And last month we took that from your school improvement plan. We shared that with your advisory council. Then we want to look at, okay, in order to reach that level of achievement, what choices do kids need to make? And again, last month we went through the gazillion choices that kids need to make at each grade level to be successful at school. So we defined all of those choices that kids need to make. And then we're now beginning to start to look at how do we design a guidance and counseling program that would help kids make those targeted choices. So here's the process. We started with just getting ready to meet with an advisory council. We put together your steering team, we collected data, we did some self-studies, and we convened the advisory council. As a renewal school, your first meeting with the advisory council was one where we looked at your vision statement that you wrote before, and we just asked the advisory council, given who we are today and what we know now, and given our community and our kids today, is our vision statement still okay, or do we need to edit it at all? So you've wrote your vision statement, rewrote or revised your vision statement, and then in September we went to your program goals, and again we said, given who we are now and what we know today, our program goals, the student choices that we want kids to make, do we need there to be edits in those program goals? And if your school is typical, there usually are several edits in the program goals. So that's what we're coming to right now. We're at that part of the process where we have program goals. And if your school is typical, you may have 40, 50, 60 different choices, different goals that you want kids to make in order to be outstanding learners at school. So now we're going to start to narrow down those program goals and really look at which ones are we going to spend a lot of time and energy on next year. So before we do that, we're going to expand our resources. So basically we're going to say to the advisory council, you know, we've got these 40, 50, 60 choices that we want kids to make. The more resources we can put into the school counseling program, the more we're going to be able to help kids make those choices. So we start out with step 4A. In this next meeting, we're just going to expand the resources. How can we get more time? How can we get more money? How can we get more materials? We'll just look at really expanding all those resources. And then we'll come back and say, okay, if we're successful at doing that, then really realistically, how many of these goals can we really tackle hard next year? And those will become our program goals. So the focus of this meeting that's coming up this month is to expand our resources, and then based on how much time and energy and resources, fund we have, realistically, how many of those program goals can we tackle as primary goals. So then next month in November, we'll come back and look at another set of data to try to figure out why aren't kids making the choices that we want them to make. What's getting in the way? Is it a lack of knowledge? Is it personal or social issues that are interfering with learning? Is it that the kids know what they're supposed to do, but we're not giving them the opportunity, or not giving all kids the opportunity? So we'll start looking at root causes. And then once we know what the root causes are, in other words, once we know why kids aren't making the choices we want them to make, then we'll design activities. This makes our activities very high leverage activities. They're not just kind of randomly selected activities, but they're very targeted activities that are going to tackle the root causes or the reasons why the kids aren't making the choices we want them to make. So that will be the last advisory council meeting to start looking at the activities, and then second semester we'll begin preparing those activities. So we'll write lesson plans and come up with a calendar for the year, both for the program and for the individual counselors, and then to develop a budget. So that's the process. Let me just stop real quickly and see if anybody has any questions about process. Okay, not seeing any hands. So let's go on. So this month's task is to look at priority program goals, priority goals. One of the things that we have to do to get ready for this meeting is to make sure that we can express to the Advisory Council what all of our resources are. And there's a document in the tools section called Resource Calculation. This is something that we went through together in the beginning of the year. But let's just look at this document too, and I just want to review and make sure that everybody understands how to do these calculations. So let me grab this this document, and here it is. So there's two calculations we need to make. One is the student ratios, and the other one is the per pupil expenditures. So on the ratios, we've given you this kind of worksheet where you would calculate three things. One is how many school counselors do we have, not on paper but in reality. And then the second step is how many students there are, and then we'll do the division to come up with our ratio. So on this first part, it would work like this. So let's say the first counselor that we're talking about is named Reynolds. Then we'd look at, okay, on paper, what is this counselor's full-time equivalency? So on paper, that counselor's full-time equivalency is a full-time position, one FTE. Then we're going to look at the time and task analysis. So when we add up this counselor's all of the time percentages, we find out that this counselor spends 20% of her time doing things that have nothing to do with guidance and counseling. It's all the non-program tasks. So to look at that another way, then she's spending 80% of her time doing program tasks. So her percentage, oops, just lost that. So her percentage of time that she's spending doing program tasks is 80%. Then when I take 80% and multiply it times the FTE, that gives us the adjusted FTE, or the actual time that that counselor is working as a school counselor. So I'm going to take 80%, or 0.8 times 1 gives me her adjusted FTE, which is a 0.8 adjusted FTE. So then I would just do that for all the counselors and then add up exactly in reality how many school counselors do we have, how many people do we have working as school counselors. Again, it's not fair, I think, to the counselors. It's not fair to anyone to say that we have a full-time counselor when that counselor is doing a percentage of tasks that have nothing to do with guidance and counseling. So we want to add up the adjusted FTEs to find out really how many people do we have actually doing work as in guidance and counseling. Then we're going to take the total number of students, and then we'll divide the total number of students by the total FTE to give us our ratio, the number of students per counselor. So that's a little bit different way to calculate ratios because it's not based on paper counselors. It's based on how many people we actually have in doing the counseling work. Okay, so that's the ratio. And then on the budget, one of the things I wanted to point out here is that when you're calculating how much funding is available for your programs, we don't want to add salaries and positions into this number. This budget is the budget that you have available to spend on resources to support your program other than personnel. Okay, then we talked to a lot of counselors, especially elementary counselors, who tell us that they don't have a budget, that when they want something they just go to their principal and say, may I please have this, and then the principal decides yes or no. That's really not a model that I would prefer because it doesn't give you a chance, one, to know what the total amount of money is that you're going to have available, and then to prioritize based on what you think is important, where that money should be spent and where it's not spent. So really we think best case scenario is just like other departments, that the school counseling department has a set amount of money and then the counselors can prioritize what needs are most important and then determine how to spend that money. So, but if you are in a position where you don't get a budget, then what we would suggest is that you just look at, even if you have to estimate it, what's been the average amount of funds over the past maybe 3 years that have been coming to school counselors to support their work. So, and then if it's a 3-year average, divide by 3 to give you an average annual budget. And then one other thing in this section, I also find, especially in elementary schools, that there are some schools that have absolutely zero budget. So if that's the case, it's perfectly okay to write in there that your annual budget is 0. Okay, so then you would just take your annual budget, divide it by the total number of students, and then that gives you your per pupil expenditure for school counseling. If your school is typical, that per pupil expenditure is probably going to be pretty low, and I think when you share this information with your advisory council, the light bulb will go off that it's pretty hard to provide service for students when if your budget per student is 56 cents or $1 or whatever it ends up being. So okay. So, and then this data, both the ratio and the per pupil expenditure, as you're talking about all of these choices that you want kids to make, and then you start coming up with, but our ratio is a gazillion to 1, and our budget is next to nothing, and your advisory council sees all these choices that they want your kids to make. They tend at this point to really become advocates for you in terms of expanding your resources. Okay, so that's that part. Then let's go to the PowerPoint presentation that goes with this section, and we'll just run through this presentation real quickly. So we're welcoming people to your renewal meeting. We're talking about that. Here's today's agenda. We're going to review, and then we're going to develop a resource expansion plan, and we're going to come up with then priority goals. So the first part's the review, and I'll flip through that quickly because we just talked about that. Okay, on this slide right after the review through the process, we're just kind of reminding people that out of each of these meetings there are products. And the products that we've revised so far, the vision statement and the program goals, and then the products that we're going to look at and revise today is the resource expansion plan and the priority goals. Okay, any questions so far? Chris, anything coming in? No questions, Sue. Okay, great. So, then let's look at this month's tasks, expanding our resources, and then looking at priority goals. So, our program goals, there are a lot of, and our priority goals then are going to be a subset of all the priority goals that we came up with at our last month's meeting. And in order to come up with that subset, we need to, let me back up. So we're expanding, we're looking at a subset of priority goals, and then the other thing is for these priority goals, we're going to monitor data so that we can see are the activities that we're doing having an impact on those goals. Okay, so the number of program goals we have, we're looking at the number of program goals that we have the capacity to tackle as priority goals, and that is limited by the available resources. So there's two activities for today. One is to look at the resource expansion plan, and then based on the resources that we anticipate being available, we're going to select a small number of program goals to become the priority goals. So the first part then is to look at the resource plan. So this slide just talks about all the different types of resources that are available to school counselors, time and our ratio of our positions per student. So time and ratio are the biggest ones. But we also want to look at additional school counseling resources and additional community resources that are there. We'll look at space, technology, material supplies, professional development opportunities that are available to counselors, the perceptions of the school counselors, and also funding that's available. I purposefully put funding last so that a lot of times when people think you're just there to ask for money, you hit resistance right up at the front. So we want to look at, there's a lot of resources that we can expand that don't cost anything. And so we purposefully have put funding at the end. Okay, so the first thing we're looking at is school counseling staff as a resource. And on this slide, you would have typed in prior to the meeting, everybody's names, all your counselors' names, their FTE on paper, and then the percentage of time that they actually do school counseling tasks, and then their adjusted FTE. For some of you, you might find out that while you think you have 4 counselors in the building, in reality you only have 2 people, the equivalent of 2 people doing school counseling tasks. So, and that's just something to bring up. One other thing on this page that's important is that if you have a large number of non-program tasks, people are going to ask you right here, well, if you're only spending 50% of your time doing school counseling stuff, what are you spending the rest of your time doing? So we suggest you be prepared with a list of non-program activities so that you can just pass that out at that point. Here's all the things that we're doing. They have nothing to do with counseling or guidance. And, I always add, these are good tasks. Somebody has to do them. But it's just that when school counselors are doing these, we can't be helping kids make those choices that we want them to make. Okay. Then after you've explained the FTEs, then at this page, we're just looking at, writing into the left box, here's our total number of students. Here's our total counselors with the adjusted FTE, and then when you do the math, here's our ratio. Each of our counselors has, 510 students or 320 students or whatever your ratios end up being. Okay, and then a lot of these slides are just you updating them. Does the school counseling does the school counseling support staff position exist, like a secretary or administrative assistant? Just yes or no, and you can just switch that box around to make it be no if you don't have one. Here's all the non-program tasks. Here's a slide that you can also refer to let people know, what you're doing that has nothing to do with guidance or counseling. And then looking at time, the first thing we want to do here is help the advisory council come up with their desired time use percentages. We want your advisory council to do that before they actually see your data on your time use percentages, because they tend to, if you let them see the actual data ahead of time, they tend to not look at their vision or their, their ideals of how they want you to spend your time. So for example, let's say you were spending 50% of your time doing non-program tasks. In their dream, they'll just start to dream like for 40%. But if they haven't seen that data yet, they'll come down to like 5%. So we want to do their desired time percentages before we share any data with them. And basically what we're doing on this slide is these 5 posters you've got put up around the room, and you've given each of your advisory council members 5 sticky dots, or you've got markers where they can come up. And you're just asking them at their seats to just say, in your ideal program, what percentage of the counselor's time would be spent in each of these 5 areas? You may need to review with them what those areas are. And just ask them each individually, without talking to their neighbors, to just say, their dream program, what percentage of the time are the counselors spending doing things that are non-program, that have nothing to do with guidance or counseling, with management activities, with advocacy, counseling, and guidance. So then after they've determined that and written that down on a little piece of scrap paper at their desks, then we invite them to come up to the Instagraphs. And these work just the same as they did 3 years ago. People are putting their, the first person up, if they're voting for 5%, they'd come to the guidance Instagraph, and they'd put their sticky dot or an X in the 5% box. The next person coming up, if they were also voting 5%, they would put their sticky dot or their X in the box above the one that the previous person did. And as you do that, these bar graphs start to grow. Then it is, most of them, well, probably all of them, will end up being a bell curve. The bar graph, that the percentage that has the highest amount will be at the top of the bell curve. And then so it's really easy then for you to say, okay, as we look at these, it looks like the feel of this group is that for guidance, that 30% of our time should be spent on guidance, and then you'll go to the next poster, and 40% of our time should be spent on counseling, and so you'll just go through all of these to come up with their desires for how they would like you to spend your time. If you've never done an Instagraph before, it's kind of amazing to me how this all works out. We've been doing this for, I don't know, 15 years. And I always have a little bit of fear that when I get to the top of all those bell curves, that they're not going to add up to 100%, but they will. So one question you might get is, yeah, actually, that won't come up on this one. So yeah, you're good. It'll work out. If you remember doing Instagraphs when we did this before, on some Instagraphs we have you take the responses, the number of responses that are down at the bottom here, and divide by 3. But on this Instagraph we don't do this. This one's a little bit different. Everybody just gets 1 vote per poster. So everybody brings their sticky dot up, or puts 1 X on each of the posters. Okay. Then after they've done their ideals, then we'll come back and do the actuals. And on this chart, then you can see, you'll be able to say, the group, your desire was 30%, but on guidance, we're at 10%. Or on counseling, your desire was 40%, and on that one, right now we're at 60%. We're over on that one a little bit. So it just gives you a chance to kind of compare the reality to their desires. Again, this information for school counselors that do a lot of non-program, none of your advisory councils is going to wish that their school counselors do non-program tasks. So for a lot of you who have a lot of non-program, this will be a big eye-opener. And when you get to starting to talk about, what are you going to do to expand your resources, they'll get really creative on this one because they want to get rid of those non-program tasks for you. Okay, then the following slides, budget, you're just telling people, here's our total budget, here's our total students, that averages out to, X dollars per student. Our network, here are the who we network with in the school on a regular basis, and I just added in here some the populations that exist in most schools, and then just put check marks if you do network with them. There may be some of these that you have to remove. Maybe you don't have regular meetings with your principal as a department, and so take those out. Okay, so that's the school network. Here's a community network as a resource, and again, I just added on some typical organizations that schools counselors network with in the community. Then here is a sheet for you to explain where are there additional activities that are not being provided by counselors but are being provided by others in the school, in this case teachers. So are there guidance activities that your teachers are doing? My guess is there probably is. If your teachers, for example, have a advisor-advisee program, that you'd have tons of stuff to put in here. Your health teachers, your family and consumer science teachers, they are probably doing some guidance activities, some guidance curriculum. So this gives you just a sheet to provide all of that. So it just, lets you show what else is happening in the school that's providing guidance and counseling services for kids besides what the school counselors are doing as part of their program. And then on the next slide, this is the same thing, but now it's the services that are being provided by community members. So if you have a community mental health association, they have services that are available to your students that you could list in the counseling section. Or if you're Boy Scouts, when they're working on their career badge, that's an area where they're doing career guidance that you could add there. So you're just kind of looking, at what else is happening in guidance and counseling, advocacy, and management that is outside of what you do as school counselors. Professional development, we're just listing all of the professional development opportunities that your counselors participate in. I've listed some of the larger state and national conferences. You could add to this courses that you're taking, publications that you subscribe to, just, how do you stay current, how do you stay up to date. And again, for some counselors, there would be nothing to put on this list because either the counselors don't take the time or there's not the funding available or whatever. So just that list. And then on additional resources, these are just some quick things. Space, do you have these things? Technology, internet access. And then any materials that you have, books that are available, software programs that are available for the kids. So you've got materials, supplies that are typical. And then finally, the perceptions of the school counselors. This is actually a printout on the in the survey data. One of the reports that is password protected, so you can only get to this report if you're a school counselor. It's not available to the public. But if you include this slide, you would pass out that report that you've printed from the survey page, and it would help everybody understand the perceptions that the kids have of the school counseling program. I know that there are some counselors that decide that it just feels uncomfortable if the kids have really blasted them to make that public to your advisory councils. And if that's the case for you, you can remove that slide and just not share that, but you should look at that with your counselors. But whether or not you want to share that with your advisory council, that's up to you. Usually by this time the advisory council understands that you are doing good work and that you're working your tail off, and they may be a good person to brainstorm with you about, if you have this wonderful program, but the perception with the kids is that you don't. How do you rectify that? How do you do outreach with the kids and publicity with the kids or with the adults in your school so that people realize that they've got a really good resource in their school counselors? So I encourage you to share that data with your advisory council. But again, you have to kind of respect the politics in every building too. So if that's uncomfortable, just take the slide out. But do look at the data. And even if you don't choose it with your advisory council, you can still choose as counselors to do a marketing, and advocacy for your program activities in the coming year if you need to. Okay, so we've looked at all the resources. Now we're going to look at the priorities, and so we're coming back with, so we're looking at the priorities for your resources. So we're coming up with this resource Instagraph. All of the topics that we've just gone through and talked about with everybody are over here at the left, and this time you do want to divide by 3. So we're asking people, here's the resources we already talked about. Are there any other resources that we need to add on? And so if there are, people can just add those down here. Then divide by 3, that's how many votes people get. And they go up to the poster and put their sticky dots on so you can see what resources they want to work on. Then the next part is to come up with an expansion plan. So in this section, you're writing down that from the Instagraph, they said that the #1 thing that they wanted to work on was time. And we are going to change this next year, so an X would go in here. And then what's the plan? So they would write in here, we're going to come up with an advisor-advisee program so that, we're providing guidance that way, or we're going to enable a teacher that doesn't have a full teaching load to come in and be a support person for the counselors. Or, what's the plan? And it's really amazing to me how creative people get there. I mean, in my school, I was so touched. At this point, our athletic director has said, I'm happy to administer the state test on your behalf. I can take that part on. Another teacher said, you guys have been coordinating graduation every year. There's no reason why a school counselor has to do that. I'll chair a committee of teachers to do that for you. So they really got creative on that. The other thing is funding. To me, $100 was like $1 million. But to a community, to a business in your community, or to your community foundation, $100 is like nothing. I mean, you might be able to get organizations to donate a small amount. So, and then in the last column, if you are targeting that there's a resource you're going to expand, we want to know what's the level of that resource that you want for next year. So, it might be, we're going to bring in an extra $500, or we're going to decrease the percentage of time that the counselors spend on non-program tasks to 5% or whatever. So one other thing on this form is we've got our current time use up here and then the desired time use. We're just wanting to remind people that as you expand some of these resources, that's going to help us move from our current to our desired time use. So, okay, and then this page is the product of the first half of the meeting, and then this page you'll upload to the online system. Okay, and the priority goals, this is a pretty easy section. We are then saying, okay, now we know how many resources we're going to have next year. Let's go to those goals and let's see how many we can tackle as priorities. So this basically explains what we're trying to do. We have limited time and resources and funding. So which 1 to 3 student choices should take priority as we design our school counseling program for next year? If you expand your resources a ton, you might be looking at more than 3 student choices. but I really would caution you, if you promise too much, instead of doing a few things really well, you're going to do everything in a kind of a mediocre way. In my own program, we limited it to one, and we made the commitment to our community that that student choice, we were going to do whatever it took to get kids to make that choice. So, you know, because you can't let go of the rest of your program. I mean, you're still doing everything that you normally do. You're just really expanding your resources in this one section. Okay, so step one, and I'll show you this in a minute, is to review the Student Choice Goals report from your last report. And then you're just working with your advisory council to pick, let's look at these, what 1 to 3 are the most important. The discussion is how many priority choices should we take, and then which choices should be our priority. And then finally, the last section, I'll show you this on the online system, is to establish data targets for those 1, 2, or 3 priority choices. This is just kind of a sample of what they would look like in an elementary school. So in an elementary school, maybe one of our choices that we want kids to make is to come to school. Of course, that's kind of a parent choice at the elementary level as well. So but we want kids to have fewer than 10 absences per year. Our current data is 87%. We want our targeted data to be 95%. Third graders turning their homework in on time. Current data is 85. We want our target data a year from now to be 95. Those are some elementary examples. Here's some middle school examples. And then here are some high school examples. Okay, so the tips in making these data targets is we want the data targets to be challenging but reachable within 1 year. And just one other thing to remember is that lots of people can implement activities to help you reach those targets, not just the school counselors, but teachers. If you make this a school-wide initiative, teachers, parents, your community organizations that are involved in your advisory council, everybody can be helping with that. Oops. Okay. Okay, so when you're doing your student choice goals, then you would say, oops, let me come back. You would write in here what's the student group that we want to make this choice. It may be just third graders or freshmen or all students. What is the choice? What's our current data? And then they're coming up with the target data. So this you would fill in at your advisory council meeting. So then finally, towards the end, we're just saying, okay, given the resources we have available, including time, in all reality, do we have the capacity for implementing activities that will address each of our priority goals in an effective way so we can reach those targets? If you are feeling uncomfortable, like you're feeling totally overwhelmed at this point, then you need to speak up here and say, you know, with everything else we do, I don't have the capacity to really focus on 3 areas. It just feels too much. Let's focus on 1 or 2. So if you feel like you don't have the capacity, you can work to obtain additional resources, or you can omit a few of your goals, the priority goals. Okay, and then we're just telling people at the end so that in meeting 4, you're going to be coming up with your root causes that will explain why kids aren't making those choices. And then in meeting 5, we're looking at activities to help kids make those choices. Okay. Any questions? Let's pause real quick. I know we're a few minutes over. Chris, anything come up? No questions, Sue. Okay, okay. So that is the end of that meeting. Let's go back then. Oops. There we go. I'll look at what's coming in. Okay, submissions this month, there's 2 things, or actually 3 things. One is the resource expansion plan that you're just going to upload. So there's no online entry. You're just going to upload that document after you've completed it and saved it in your computer. The 2 rubric items are that the action plan includes activities designed to gain resources for the school counseling program, and a data target or the goal situation is included. That's that far right-hand column. So that's it on the action plan. And then on the priority goals, it's just one or more priority goals have been identified. We just want to make sure that out of all your gazillion goals, there's at least one that you're working really, really hard on next year. And then the other product from this month is just the advisory council minutes. Okay, so let's go to the online system. And we'll take a look at that. Okay, so when you get to the online system, make sure that you're looking on the process tab on the renewal part of the process tab. And if you scroll down to October, here it is. So we're watching a webcast. We're conducting meeting 3. We're uploading the resource action plan. So this is, and if you hit this button, you can actually download the plan. You can also get it from the manual page. But to upload it, you just click this uploader button, and it will allow you to browse your computer and then click on the right file and then click upload, and it will go up to our system and be saved there for you. Okay, make sure I'm back on the renewal page. Then you're going to review the program goals report. And this is also the same report that during the meeting you would give to your advisory council members so that they could see all of your program goals. When you click this button, it takes a long time, just a heads up, for our computer to generate this report for you. Our computer, when you click this button, is finding all of the program goals that you entered last month, plus it's taking all of the survey data that your students have reported and putting it on that report. So I just went ahead and created one a little earlier so you could see what it looks like. So here's what it looks like. These are all the program goals that you've entered in, and then the grade level that you said you want to have those goals for and which students in that grade level. And then we pulled the data off of the survey. So if it is a goal that aligns with one of the survey items, we've pulled that data off. So we think this data would be really helpful to you and to your advisory council members. As you're going through this data, you might be saying, well, about a third of our kids are choosing to make these choices, but maybe there's one, that you get down to that's, really low, like on this one, 0%. This is fictitious data, but 0% submitted a post of your seniors said that they submitted a post-secondary application. So so that may be one. Gosh, you really need to get working on that one. Or there may be others that I saw one that was a 75% one up here that you decide, well, most of us are making that choice, so well, that's not going to be a priority one for us. So at any rate, so we think that this data will help you to identify the priority goals. If there is a goal that you wrote yourself that it does not align with one of the survey items, there won't be any data, of course, out here for those. But for the items that do align with the survey, you've got that. And then one other situation, if for some reason, I doubt if this will happen, but if there is anytime that N is less than 10 for confidentiality purposes, we don't report the data. So you may see that. Okay, so that's that report. So you're reviewing the goals report, and that's also when you get to your meeting, you would print that report to give to people to help them look through the list and decide what they think should be the priority goals. Then you're entering the priority goals, and again, when you click this enter button, it's going to take a long time because it's pulling all the data from all of the gazillion surveys we have and putting them into this report. So this is, whoops, let me go ahead and do that one. So priority goals, I'm going to click on enter. I go to this page, and then I'm going to select the priority goals. And this is, you'll see how long this is going to take. And right now, our computer is sorting through all of the 40,000 surveys from students that we have from 2013. It's pulling out this school's survey responses, putting everything in the right places, and then generating the report. So there we go. So that's about how long it takes. And then all you need to do is go down and check which of your goals do you want to be priority goals. So you can see it's pretty simple. On this one, I've already checked have an updated 4-year course plan, and then an updated written post-secondary education plan. So just as a sample, you know, out of all these gazillion choices that we want kids to make, there's 2 that we're really going to focus on. Okay, and then I'm going to go back. Then once you've identified your priority goals, the last step is to enter the priority goal data. So you click on Enter, and there are my 2 priority goals. And you can see we've pulled up data from the last 3 years, and I'm seeing here this should be 11, 12, 13. I'll get that fixed right away. But so you can kind of see, okay, this past year it was 32% of the kids said that they had a written 4-year course plan. The year before that it was 33, 32, and that's, you know, just not acceptable. We want every kid in the building to have a written 4-year course plan and to remember that they did. So I might, you know, even make that 100% if you're, you know, really focused on every kid in the building and you're really going to hit that one hard next year. And, you know, you're not going to stop until you are sure that, 1, every kid has a plan and every kid remembers that they have a plan. And then you can say, okay, this is going to be my goal for 2013. I'll make this one 2013, and it's going to be spring. And then let's say you want to think forward. I can add another target in there, and I can say, and I want to maintain 2,000 or 100% in spring of 2014. So you're not limited to just 1 year out if you want to go a little farther. Then the other thing I wanted to show you is, let's say that that you don't want to use survey data. Survey data is perceptions data. It's not as strong as actually counting something. And let's say I can open my desk drawer and I can find a written post-secondary education plan for every kid in my building. I don't have to use survey data. I've got something in hand that I can count. If that's the case, just click Other. So we're not having gray data, it's Other. And it's telling me that switching the survey data means that switching to Other means that survey data will not appear. And I'm saying I understand that, so I'm going to click Save. And then I am asked to explain what I'm going to count. So what will you count to evaluate this goal? I will count the number of written post-secondary plans that I have that are on file in the counseling center. And then I have to put in my baseline data. You know that right now there's 70% of the kids have that in the spring of 2013. And then what do I want my target data to be? You know, whatever. So if you change your mind, you can always go back, click survey data, and the survey data will pop up again. So okay, so that's how to get the data in. This took quite a while to explain, and I know we're over. I apologize for that. This meeting is actually not as long. It's talking about resources, and then when you get to the priority goals, you've got that list there, and it's really kind of quick. You're just asking people, you know, look down our list. Which of these things really jump out at you that you want to make sure that we address for next year? And so that second part is really should be kind of quick. Okay, I think that's it. Let me pause real quickly, see if there's any questions. I don't see any questions, Sue. Okay, thank you everybody for going over with me. Again, we try to stop these on time, and just had good discussion this morning, and we went a little over. I apologize. So thanks, everybody. We look forward to hearing from you next month. Don't forget to register for all those webinars ahead of time so that we make sure that you get the reminders for the correct webinars, or we will deactivate the incorrect webinars at the end of today. So, okay, thanks, everybody.